The chair scraped loudly across the floor, cutting through the stillness of the morning like a blade. "Get up, old man. This table's ours now." The voice came from one of the new guys, baseball cap turned backward, smug grin, chest puffed out with testosterone and ignorance. Beside him, 4 more guys, all around 18 to their early 20s, laughed like it was just some harmless joke. Baggy clothes, flashy jackets, restless eyes scanning the diner for validation. Sam Keller looked up slowly, unbothered, like he was waking up from a different time. He glanced at the kid who had spoken, then at the table, then calmly picked up his coffee mug with a steady hand. He didn't say a word. He simply stood up. That threw the group off. They were expecting resistance, a grumble, maybe a curse, something to push back against. But the old man gave them nothing. He just walked to the table at the back, near the restroom, the one nobody really liked to sit at. He placed his black-covered book on the wooden surface, pulled the chair into place, and sat down again, crossing his legs. The gesture confused them, not because it looked weak, but because it was so composed, and that bothered them more than if he had fought back. Lena, the owner of the diner, watched from behind the counter. She recognized that look. Samuel "Sam" Keller was no ordinary old man. At 72, his posture was still upright, his movements smooth, almost choreographed. He always arrived at the same time, ordered the same black coffee, and read books about combat techniques, like they were poetry. There was something in the way he carried himself that reminded her of soldiers at ease, calm on the outside, but always ready. Troy Maddox, clearly the leader of the group, looked unsettled. He didn't like Sam's response. He wanted conflict. He wanted an audience. "Hey, Grandpa," he called out louder. "You moved pretty quick for someone who probably wears diapers." Laughter. One of them even forced it. Sam kept reading, unfazed. Troy walked over to the back table, pulled out a chair and sat sideways, propping his elbow on the backrest. "You always this obedient? You think we're gonna beat you up or something?" Sam closed his book gently, marking the page with the same folded paper he always used. He finally looked up. "No, I just figured you needed that table more than I did." His voice was calm, no sarcasm, but the words hit like a brick. Troy frowned, unsure if he was being subtly insulted. "And what makes you think that, old man?" Sam took a slow breath, like he was counting to 3 inside his head. "Because only someone who doesn't have control needs a stage." For a moment, silence took over. A thick, weighty silence that made even the ticking clock on the wall sound too loud. The other guys looked at each other. Leon, the youngest of the group, looked uneasy, but Troy just chuckled. "So you think you're wise, huh? Sitting there with your little fighting book. You can't even lift your arm anymore." Sam lowered his gaze for a second. When he looked back up, there was no anger, just firmness. Lifting your arm is easy. Knowing when not to, that's the hard part. Then Curtis stepped forward, holding a dirty napkin in his hand. He walked across the diner, pretending to wipe a nearby table, and deliberately dropped the wet napkin into Sam's lap. "Oops, sorry about that, sir." Troy burst out laughing. Lena shouted, "That's enough!" from behind the counter. Sam picked up the napkin without flinching, still calm. "I get it. You're testing boundaries. You just picked the wrong target." Troy stood up. "And who would be the right one, then?" Sam slid the book aside, leaned his forearms on the table, and tilted forward slightly. "Someone who's still trying to prove something." "I'm not." Curtis laughed. "Then get up. Show us what you've got." Sam didn't move. "If I get up, it won't be to show off. It'll be to teach." Troy narrowed his eyes. "Teach?" Sam gave a small smile. "I run a training center, 2 blocks from here. Krav Maga, self-defense. Everyone's welcome, even you. If this story is already pulling you in, hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next is even more intense." Troy crossed his arms, trying to keep his cool. But something in Sam's voice, or maybe in his presence, shook the bravado right out of him. The others began to back off, but Troy felt the need to prove something, though he wasn't sure what. He stepped forward and said, "All right then, let's see what you're made of." And for the first time, Sam stood up. The sound of the chair sliding was sharp and deliberate, like the room itself knew something important was about to happen. Sam stood up slowly, unhurried, with the precision of someone who knew his own body like an old friend. The entire place froze. Troy tried to laugh it off, but the tension in his eyes betrayed his discomfort. Sam, standing tall with his arms relaxed at his sides, didn't look aggressive. He just looked ready. The energy inside the diner shifted. The old man who gave up his table, who endured every provocation in silence, now stared the young man down with the calm authority of a teacher facing a student who had no idea what he was about to learn. "You really want to do this here?" Sam asked, not as a threat, but as one last chance to back down. Troy didn't answer. He stepped into the center aisle, shrugged off his jacket, and rolled his shoulders like he was warming up for a fight. Curtis clapped softly, as if watching a scheduled match. Behind the counter, Lena clutched a dish towel to her chest, eyes wide, her face stiff with worry. The customers in the back barely breathed. Sam walked to the open space between tables and stopped 2 steps from Troy. "This isn't about winning or losing," he said calmly. "It's about control, and you don't have it. That makes you dangerous, mostly to yourself." Troy laughed, but it came out shaky. He threw the first punch fast, a high, impulsive swing, and that was his mistake. Sam dodged with a simple turn of his torso, caught the wrist mid-air, and applied a lock that froze the kid's arm instantly. A heartbeat later, Troy was on his knees, his arm twisted behind his back, his face aimed at the floor. Sam wasn't using strength, just technique. He released Troy gently and stepped back. First lesson: fighting isn't about who yells the loudest. It's about who listens the deepest. Troy stood up like a drenched dog, his pride hurting more than his body. He looked over at his friends. None of them seemed eager to continue the game. Sam sat back down and took a deep breath. He picked up his book, flipped to the marked page, and rested his fingers there, though his eyes remained alert. "I'll still be waiting for you at the gym," he said, not looking directly at them. "Today, tomorrow, whenever you're ready. I don't train perfect people, just the ones who want to get better." Curtis looked uneasy. "You serious right now?" Sam nodded. "Always." Leon, who hadn't said a word until then, stepped forward hesitantly. "You were like, in the military, right?" Sam gave a small smile. "I was. Instructor. Trained more soldiers than I can count. A lot of them had that same lost look in their eyes you all do." Troy was still catching his breath. "So what? You think we're weak?" Sam looked up, calm and steady. "I think you're way too good to waste your energy pretending to be tough." The tension began to ease, like someone had lifted a weight off the air. A few customers went back to their meals. Lena finally exhaled behind the counter, and the rest of the group started drifting away. Sam finished the last sip of his coffee, stood up once more, and headed toward the exit. As he passed Troy, he stopped beside him and said without turning, "The gym door's always open. The choice to walk in, that's all yours." Troy stayed where he was, frozen, unsure whether he felt angry, embarrassed, or just curious. All eyes were on him, but no one said a word. At the far end of the diner, the wall clock read 9:25, and for the first time in a long time, that morning felt unlike any other. Troy adjusted his jacket over his shoulder, but didn't move. He stared at the floor like he was searching for something he'd never really lost, but maybe was finally ready to find. The bell above the door chimed again. Sam stepped out of the diner with squared shoulders and steady strides, as if the entire incident had just been another part of his morning routine. The Lancaster air was cool and damp, and the sky was slowly clearing between scattered clouds. As he rounded the corner, he walked to a small brick building with a modest sign above the door: Keller Self-Defense, Krav Maga and Conduct. Inside, the space was clean and no frills. No mirrors, no shiny machines. Just worn mats, heavy punching bags, and a bulletin board with old photos. Soldiers in training, a group smiling with dirt-stained hands. Sam in the center, years younger, but with the same focused eyes he had now. He hung his jacket on a hook, switched on the old radio playing soft jazz, flipped on the fluorescent lights, and swept the mats with the precision of a ritual. This gym wasn't just a place to train. It was where he remembered who he was, where he laid his ghosts to rest, the ones that visited when the house got too quiet. On a wooden shelf sat a metal box filled with worn tapes and folded letters. He opened it, pulled one out, and read slowly, his eyes following handwriting marked by the grit of time. It was from a former student, sent from a base in Afghanistan. Thank you for teaching me that fear is faced in silence, not by shouting. Sam placed the letter back inside, closed the box, and sat down on the wooden bench. Later that same day, just before sunset, the gym door opened again. Troy stepped in alone. No cap, no jacket, no friends. Just a loose t-shirt, sweatpants, and a hesitant look in his eyes. Sam didn't say a word. He just motioned toward the bench beside him. Troy sat down awkwardly, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the floor. I thought about what you said, he murmured, and about what I did too. Sam listened in silence. I'm not a bad person. I just grew up learning things the wrong way. Sam nodded, without judgment. We all just repeat what we see, until we learn to see it differently. Troy glanced around. This place, it's different. Sam stood up and handed him a sealed mouthguard. You didn't come here to talk. You came to begin. Troy hesitated for a second, but took it and stood. He walked to the center of the mat. Sam followed. They faced each other. Sam didn't take a fighting stance. He just stood there, arms at his sides. You gonna try to take me down? Troy asked. Sam smiled. You're going to try to understand yourself. The door opened again. Leon and Curtis stepped inside, a little unsure. Sam looked their way and gave a small nod. Shoes off. Everyone starts from zero here. Curtis looked like he was about to say something, but instead, he just kicked off his sneakers and stepped in. Leon did the same. The three of them stood side by side, waiting, as Sam slowly walked back to the center. Welcome to the place where the next step is what matters. It doesn't matter where you came from. What matters is what you choose to do now. The first few weeks were quiet, almost tense. Troy barely looked Sam in the eyes, and every session started with stiffness in his shoulders, like he was carrying more than just his own body. Curtis and Leon came back too, though always late, unfocused, sometimes grumbling. But Sam didn't demand explanations. He demanded consistency. The body lies. Discipline doesn't, he'd say between sets of kicks and locks. And like that, day after day, the old combat instructor began to chip away at the walls each of those young men had built to hide their own pain. The gym began running every afternoon. No ads, no flashy signs, no videos. Sam wasn't looking for attention. He was looking for transformation. The sessions weren't about aggression, but about restraint. They weren't about how to win, but when to stop before a hit becomes unnecessary. Every move was practiced in silence. Every correction came with calm precision. Mistakes weren't met with yelling, but with a direct look, the kind that makes you want to do better for yourself. Little by little, Troy stopped wearing loud outfits, traded his hat for focus. Curtis, once restless, began helping clean the mats. Leon stopped showing up late. Something had shifted, not on the outside, but deep within. One afternoon, after training, Sam gathered them on the mat. The radio played low in the background, and the air carried that distinct mix of sweat and damp wood. You're not the same guys who walked in here that first day, he said. And that's got nothing to do with technique. Troy looked up, curious. Then what's it about? Sam rested his hands on his knees and took a slow breath. It's about the courage to keep coming back, even when everything in you is screaming to quit. Leon squinted. Have you ever thought about giving up? Sam met his eyes. More times than I can count, but I always came back. For me, for others, for the ones who couldn't. Silence stretched out. Then Curtis asked something no one saw coming. You lost a lot of people, didn't you? Sam just nodded. He sat there, eyes fixed on a spot on the wall where an old photo hung. Soldiers smiling in the sand, all of them way too young for the harshness of that place. Troy followed his gaze. That one there, was that you? Sam pointed to the guy on the edge of the photo. That was my best student. Never liked guns, but he was always the first to run when someone went down. Leon shifted his legs and fell silent. Curtis too. And in that quiet moment, between sweat, memory, and the chill of the mat, they understood they weren't there to learn how to fight. They were there to learn how to respect. The next day, Lena showed up at the gym with a bag of muffins and 3 bottles of coffee. If I'd known this place was this serious, I would have come sooner. Sam thanked her with a quiet smile, but it was Troy who pulled out a chair for her. He's not just serious. He's different. Lena smiled warmly. He's always been like that. You just had to stop looking and start seeing. Curtis looked out the window. Outside, the late afternoon sky was painted in orange and violet. You gonna keep training us? Sam crossed his arms and looked at each of them. As long as you want to keep learning. Leon glanced over at Troy. I think this time, we're not going anywhere. Sam gave a small nod. Then tomorrow, same time. They all agreed. And as the guys headed out, talking about the workout, the breathing, and the good kind of soreness in their muscles, Sam stayed behind, standing still, alone, watching the steady steps of the ones who used to stumble. The thud on the mat echoed sharply. Troy landed on his side, gasping, forehead drenched in sweat, hands pressed to the ground like he needed to reconnect with his own body. Sam circled him calmly, not with superiority, but with sharp, observant eyes, watching more than just form. Curtis and Leon sat against the wall, drained but fully focused on every detail. Get up, Sam said, his voice carrying that same steady authority as always. Troy didn't hesitate. He rolled to the side, planted his foot, stood, and returned to position. Sam gave a single nod. Now, the training begins. That Friday marked 1 month since the boys first walked into Sam's gym. What began with arrogance had turned into respect. What used to be provocation had become listening, and where there was once impatience, there was now repetition, breathwork, and discipline. Those who came in looking for a fight had found structure instead. Troy no longer walked with puffed-up shoulders. He walked upright. Curtis, once unable to hold eye contact, was now the first to offer a handshake. And Leon, the quietest of them all, had become the one most eager to help the newcomers who had started showing up. The gym had no mirrors, but each of those young men had started seeing something new in themselves. That same evening, Lena organized something different. A simple dinner, a few makeshift tables, and a canvas banner with hand-painted letters that read, "For the one who teaches how to fight with purpose." The regulars from the diner showed up. Some veterans, others just curious onlookers. Sam arrived a bit later, dressed the same as always, in his dark jacket and firm, quiet steps. As he entered, the room fell silent, not out of formality, but out of respect. He walked through the tables, nodding politely, and sat beside the 3 boys, as if he were just one of them. And in truth, he was. During the dinner, Lena stood on a chair and asked for quiet. "Not every hero waves a flag," she said. "Some just teach others how to stand on their own." She pointed to Sam and smiled. "Thank you for never giving up, on your mission or on those who seemed lost." Sam tried to deflect the applause, but the whole room stood. The clapping wasn't loud or wild. It was grounded, thoughtful, honest. Troy, eyes glassy, turned to him. "Thanks for not giving back what I handed you." Sam raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly did you hand me?" Troy chuckled. "Just arrogance. But you gave me opportunity in return." At the end of the night, as everyone started leaving, Leon came up to Sam. "Do you think one day I could teach like you do?" Sam placed a hand on his shoulder. "If you keep learning, you already have." Across the room, Curtis swept the floor with Lena's help. Troy stood nearby, quietly watching it all. For the first time in his life, he felt like he belonged to something he didn't need to prove. Just live. If this story moved you as much as it moved us to tell it, drop a comment below and let us know what part hit you the hardest. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next. Real heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear silence, carry honor in their actions, and teach by example. And if you thought this one was powerful, the next might just surprise you even more. So tell us, has anyone ever believed in you before you even knew what you were capable of?